no problem.
Okay, well, uh, I assume your name is pronounced An.
Oui. Yes.
So thank you for joining us this afternoon, An. I am beyond saying that I'm a huge fan of your wines doesn't begin to express how I feel about you and your family and your wines. I will tell you that I actually have an important client who tonight, when I share this with friends and clients, will be drinking the 2001 Cuvée Frédéric Émile and a half bottle of the 375th anniversary Frédéric Émile. And he says he's going to open an 01 Selection de Grain Noble. Maybe, but anyway, so he's
tonight when you show these to your friends and clients.
He is going to be drinking those three wines. He says that he bought at the winery. He says he before COVID he visited your winery once a year and plans to again and buys wine there. And he has a large, I think, a large collection of your wines. So anyway, you have two enormous fans that are going to be viewing this tonight. And I do want to tell you a quick story before we start with the tasting. In 1994, I was the director of operations and sommelier at a really amazing restaurant in the southern United States. And we were asked to host a dinner at the James Beard House in New York City, which is an enormous, achievement. Very few restaurants were back then asked to. And so I went to my partner and said, so we have this opportunity. And he said, well, I only want to do it if we can have the best dinner ever in the history of the James Beard House, which, that would be quite an accomplishment. I said, well, everybody that serves the dinner at the James Beard House has a great chef. The food's always fabulous because you don't get asked to serve a dinner at the James Beard House unless you have fabulous food. But usually the wines are pretty pedestrian because mostly restaurants get the wines donated and the wines aren't very good usually. So if we have great wine, we can have the best dinner in the history of the James Beard House. And he said, he was really wealthy. He said, you have an unlimited budget for wine.
Okay.
So the reception wine was magnums of Veuve Clicquot La Grande Dame Champagne. The first course wine was 3 vintages of Clos St, Hune, your wine. The second course was 3 vintages of Ramone Montrachet. The main course was magnums of 1982 first growth Bordeaux. We had all 5 first growth Bordeaux plus Petrus and Cheval Blanc in Magnum 1982. And then dessert was an Imperial of 1983 Chateau d'Yquem. So
wow.
word, yeah, it was pretty amazing. Word leaked out about the wines, and they actually they sold the most tickets for a dinner they'd ever sold. They sold 110 tickets. They could only actually seat like 98, so we had to set a table in the director's office on the 3rd floor. And some famous chefs ate up there. Daniel Lepalude came and Jacques Torres, these great chefs. And we did this dinner, but I was setting up, when you serve 110 people, however many wines that is, 13 wines, it takes some organization. And I was about an hour before the dinner started, I was setting up, and I just about finished setting up, and this banquet table collapsed on my left foot. And it hurt really bad, but I didn't really think much of it. But a few minutes later, this janitor type person came in and was mopping the floor, and he said, where is all this blood coming from? And this table had actually severed my left big toe. So I had to go across the street to the hospital and have my left toe reattached while the dinner was going on. Fortunately, I had a couple of people there to help me with the wine service, and I assume they handled it pretty well. But after they reattached my toe, I came back across, like 3 hours later, I came back across the street just as dessert was being served. and they stuck a microphone in my hand and said, "Tell us about the wines. They've been fabulous, but we don't really know what we're drinking." Well, I was so hopped up on painkillers at that point from the surgery, I didn't hardly even know my name. So I don't know what I said about those three. I don't remember what the three vintages of Clos St were, and I don't remember what I said because there's no telling. I hope I didn't embarrass myself or you, but it was an amazing dinner. It was a great, great dinner. And literally, I had the permission from my boss to pick, any wines in the world. And I picked three vintages of your Riesling to serve with this dish with the first course. So I do, we go way back. We've never met, but we go way back to 1994 at least.
Nice. Wonderful stuff.
Well, as I said, thank you so much for joining us here. I would encourage everyone to pour themselves a glass of the Riesling. And you are rapidly approaching your 400th year.
Yes, in a few years from now, yes, 2026, we will be hopefully we will be able to do to throw a great big party for a big anniversary. Yes, we started in 1626 years ago in Alsace to produce wine, and we are still there, family owned and operated. So very lucky. 13 generations now, our generations with the new. The younger people, let's say.
Your winery is exactly 150 years older than the United States is.
Oh, right.
Think about that. I mean, because the Declaration of Independence was signed in 1776. 150 years old, 150 years after your winery, your family started making wine in Alsace.
Yes.
That's.
I've been traveling for 12 years at least in the US, about 3 or 4 times a year, sometimes 5, to spread the message. And it's true that many people have said that 1626, but the US were not born.
So, do you think of yourself as, Alsace has at various times in its history been French, German. Do you think of yourself, does your family think of yourselves as French, as German, or as Alsatian?
That is a question of generation, I would say. If you ask this to my great uncle Hubert, he would proudly say, first of all, that he feels very much from Alsace, and of course, French and European for sure. If you ask me, yes, there is something very special about Alsace that is very unique to this region. If I feel more French or Alsace or wherever, I never asked this question before I've been asked, and I would say, well, it depends on my mood. Maybe right now I would say from Alsace.
It's good to be a little exclusive
as well.
It's good to be a little exclusive right now to distance yourself from.
No, but the reality is that Alsace is very different. We have a very unique dialect. We have a very unique way to cook food. We were German, and that has counted a lot, even though the times were extremely difficult. I'm not talking about wars because it's not my time. I've been just told things which are terrible, of course, but having been German for a time, we have a heritage from them, from Germany, and we have then we are this very tiny, small, thin region in between the rest of France and Germany. That's something that is often said. I don't know if every young people of my age feels the same, but some of them might, especially in my village where we are very, very much together and acting a lot together for culture or patrimoine or the environment and clean castles and things like that. Voilà. Not only about wine.
At home, do you speak French or do you speak Alsatian?
French.
French. But you,
My two
but if asked to, you can speak the dialect?
understanding is okay if it's from the same area, so Ribeauvillé area, middle of Alsace. If I go north or south, it's more difficult to understand. And if I need to speak it, I can speak a few words because my grandmother used to speak only Alsatian to me, almost. But not a full conversation with a very like everyday practicant, or how to say, somebody that speaks every day. Because we are losing this dialect, unfortunately. This generation and the younger ones, they don't speak it very much anymore.
And the dialect, is that different from the north of Alsace to Ribeauvillé where you are, or to the south of Alsace? It's not understandable?
Understandable, yes, for somebody that speaks it, but it's funny sometimes for me, if I go to Strasbourg, for example, and I hear somebody speaking Alsatian, not Alsatian, Alsace dialect, I would be like, oh, it's funny because I don't understand everything they say.
Yeah.
So
do you feel what exactly is your role in the winery now?
I'm the eldest of the 13th generation. So when I came 13 years ago, let's say that for at least a year or two, I looked at, well, I used to work in the summers as well when I was the age of, the legal age of working when I was younger every summer. So I knew how to manage a tasting local, how to deal with these kind of things. But then I tried to learn a bit more about everything else, not so much about the technical side. And then I started to travel and travel and travel. When I was very young, when I started, I was 24, so I traveled more than today. In between, I had a daughter, she's 5 years old. So since then, I traveled a bit less, or at least for a longer period of time. But I still travel usually. Before COVID, of course, that was easy.
Well, the reason I ask that is, do you feel the responsibility of at some point you're going to be in charge of this winery that's almost, that maybe by that point will be 400 years old, family owned, making wine?
Wait. At first, not at all. And I was very proud to say it. Many people ask me the question as well, especially in the US, actually. How do you feel? Is it a big, something big on your shoulders? No, you know, I'm still learning. And now time is moving. It's been 13 years of work with my family, and I feel that, yes, my grandfather has retired when I came. My great uncle is retired as well for the last 2 years. Hubert, he's been to the US many, many times. Maybe some of your friends have met him in tastings because he's known like the king of Alsace almost. And my uncle and my father are still young. I cannot say they are old, but my father could already think about retirement today, but they don't. So yes, little by little, you feel that there is pressure, and especially those days with this COVID situation, you don't really know what you will get in the future. So it makes you even more, okay, we are strong. We'll get there.
How old were you when you decided that you wanted to be part of the family wine business?
Well, quite young. And I was probably, I would say, a teenager, and I was probably the only one in my circle of friends that knew, okay, I want to do this. I would like to travel and to spread the message and to be to live the life of my uncle, who was talking about that when he would come back from travels, and yes, for a very long time actually.
So you enjoy the travel part of it?
The travel part of it, not so much. I mean, less and less with the time, and probably in 20 years from now, even less. Taking a plane has never been joyful for me. But when you meet people, when you are there, and when finally you see again all these people from the distributor you have met for the last, well, depending on where you go, 2, 3, 20 years. I mean, I exaggerate, but and the restaurateurs and the wine shops and everybody that you have met all those years, and you see them again and again, sometimes not for years and years, but you see them again at some point, and that's the great part of it. And then meeting the final client as well. If I could meet every people that has consumed some Trimbach in their life, that would be magical. Talking to everybody at the end.
You mentioned the cuisine of the part of what makes Alsace special is the cuisine, and it's really true. I'm not sure it's true now, but there was a time when there were more Michelin 3-star restaurants in Alsace than there were in Paris.
Yes, and it's not the case anymore for a few years now, but it has been and it's still a region with a beautiful gastronomy, lots of Michelin stars, maybe more 1 stars now, but stars doesn't count so much. You have restaurants without star that are amazing as well, and of course, yes, famous 3 stars. Yes, we are lucky. If we want to eat well, we can eat well easily.
Is the Auberge de Lille still open?
Oh yes, and hopefully for many more years. Yeah. They have
and
been
Le Crocodile?
Oui, Le Crocodile, yes, there have been a few changes since maybe the time you visited some years ago, but taken from a younger generation as well, taken over, and very good positive updates from what I have heard. And of course, we all wish to come back soon, hopefully.
The Crocodile hosted a dinner at an inn here called the Inn at Blackberry Farms, which is in Eastern Tennessee and one of the greatest resorts in the world. And like the chef from Le Crocodile came and hosted a dinner there probably 15 years ago. It was one of the most extraordinary meals I've ever eaten. It was just incredible here. So we should talk about the Riesling, the 2018 Absolutely, Riesling yes. Classic.
Yes. So they're here as well, and I will pour a little glass. So classic Riesling. So first of all, we produce mostly Riesling. 50% of Riesling is what we do. A little bit of Pinot Noir, but just maybe 5-6%, and Pinot Gris Gewürz and Pinot Blanc, a majority as well. Then a little bit of Muscat and very little Sylvaner. But Riesling is by far our biggest production. It's the king of Alsace in our hearts. It's the most beautiful white grape in the world, in our opinion, because it ages so well. It pairs with food so well. Riesling from the great terroir, yes, they can give you so much. And every terroir has another expression with this grape, which is quite impressive. And I probably forget some good arguments, but for us, it's very, very much, I wouldn't say our favorite, but almost. And we produce many different Rieslings today. We have this classic, we have Reserve, we have Cuvée Frédéric Émile that we will taste next, Clos St, which is our extremely famous Riesling. And we have new additions, new Grand Cru now as well. Grand Cru Geisberg, Mandelberg, Schlossberg, and soon a Grand Cru Brandt that is already in the cellar in the bottles, but not released yet. Terroir in Alsace is amazing as well, 13 different types of soils. So, of course, when you talk about Grand Cru, you usually talk about one type of terroir, one type of soil. And when we talk about this Riesling, the classic, it's different parcels of vineyards in Alsace. So it's not about one type of soil, but a mix of different parcels, but 100% Riesling, of course. And always vinified in a bone dry style in stainless steel tanks. Fermentation until it gets really bone dry, except eventually 2015 or 2018, which were extremely warm vintages where you can have 5, eventually 6 grams of sugar, but always in the lower side, because this is the style we love. This is what we like to drink. And this is what, in our point of view, pairs easily with, again, what we love: oysters, beautiful seafood, lake fishes, river fishes, beautiful poultries, and whatsoever. Choucroute, of course, from Alsace, sauerkraut.
Frog legs?
Voilà. Sorry?
Cuisse de grenouille?
Cuisse de grenouille, yes. Yes, I just had that on Saturday. Some restaurants are selling at the market right now because of COVID and they cannot open. And one of them was making those cuisse de grenouille, which I find it's marvelous.
I love them. We ate them a lot when I was growing up. We fried them like fried chicken. We didn't serve them in a cream sauce like probably you do, but I love frog legs. They're delicious. So, I think Riesling is, the most misunderstood grape variety in the world. It can be frustrating, honestly, suggesting Riesling to people. They automatically assume it's sweet, and they base their assumption that Riesling is sweet on Chateau Ste. Michelle Riesling from Washington State, which is sweet and awful, and on wines like Blue Nun Liebfraumilch, which isn't Riesling. And there used to be this German Riesling called Zeller Schwarze-Katz that sold enormously in the United States that was sweet and awful. But then, the reality is there's so much Riesling like this, which is, we have 2,000 different wines in this store. It's as dry as any wine we have. I mean, so and when you try to explain to people, they just don't listen. I mean,
It's been very hard on my side as well sometimes to say to somebody, hey, sorry, I'm making you taste the Riesling if you want. And they were like, no, I don't like Riesling, it's too sweet for me. And even if you insist and you tell them it's dry, they will be like staying away from it. I feel it's coming more and more, probably thanks to all the journalists and all these sommeliers talking about summer of Riesling and blah, blah, blah. And it's recognized by all these collectors that you probably have in your shop. But in the general world of wine, not so much yet, or not enough to my point of view.
When I first started buying and selling wine in the early 70s for restaurants, this concept of terroir started being mentioned. And the idea that there was terroir was controversial. A lot of people scoffed at the idea that the wines expressed what makes the place where the grapes are grown special. There was so much misunderstanding about what the idea of terroir was. But if the Rheingau is not very far from you, right?
No, not so much.
And Rheingau Riesling and your Riesling, they're totally different, right? And the reason for that is the terroir. I mean, the reason Geisbourg is different from Mambourg is that the soil, the terroir, the soil, the exposure, the slope, everything's different. Everything's the same, right? Everything's the same, except everything's different.
Exactly, yes. No, it's true. It's unbelievable the difference we can have between, let's say, our Frédéric Émile, which comes from Geisberg and Osterberg, which will be the next wine. So soils with marl, heavy marl, limestone, and sandstone. And same exposure to the sun as, let's say, our Schlossberg, which is 100% granite. And it's a totally different wine in terms of structure, especially when you have it in the mouthfeel, and in terms of aromatics as well. And it's funny how some people prefer Frédéric Émile and some people prefer Schlossberg. And like, there is no comparison that is possible to make. It's yes, totally different wine. And that's just because of the soil: granite, volcanic, limestone, marl and limestone, clay and blah, blah, blah. I forget a few, but there are the diversity of soil in Alsace is so impressive that even people from Alsace, even the passionate, except one or two, of course, there are always exceptions, but most people still don't know exactly how rich the soils are where we are located. It's quite impressive. And me, the first, I'm not telling anything bad. I'm just saying that we have so much diversity and richness that it's hard to learn everything in one life.
Wow. And then the Vosges Mountains have an influence too, right?
Yes.
Which kind of isolate you from the world.
Yes, they isolate us from the world, yes, and from the rain, from every bad stuff that comes from the west, usually. And when we say it's pouring rain in the Vosges Mountains, it can be extremely dry in Alsace. And when people think about Burgundy, which is quite close from Alsace, we are actually much drier than Burgundy, and of course from the Vosges, no comparison. But yes, it's a barrier, a frontier, a border, let's say, for the rain. So we are the second driest region in France. That's helping us very much to produce all these beautiful white wines with a lot of organic agriculture in the vineyards, and probably the region has been pioneer in some way before some other regions, very, very, very strong in organic viticulture and biodynamic as well.
Well, we better, you want to taste the Cuvée Frédéric Émile next?
Yes.
Okay. And then the Pinot Gris last?
Exactly.
Okay. So we only have 17 minutes left, so we better talk about the Frédéric Émile. Yes. It's my recollection that Bruce Sanderson, who writes about Alsatian wine for Wine Spectator, said that the 2001 Cuvée Frédéric Émile was the greatest wine ever made in Alsace. Is that true? Do you remember that?
Oh, did he say that at that time? Maybe.
I think he
possibly
did.
It was just when I entered the winery back in the end of the vintage. Yes, 2008 I came. We were selling 2001 after 2003 and 2. Bruce Sanderson, I met him. I know who he is, but I don't remember exactly what he said. But possibly. To me, 2001 is one of the greatest vintages of Frédéric Émile or Clos St. Riesling in general, actually, because you have everything. You have dry wines, bone dry wines, and we have Sélection de Grenoble as well. So it's the magic year, the year you have everything you want. Boom, boom, boom.
Well, I've tasted it a few times, and if it's not the best wine ever made in Alsace, I want to taste the one that's better. Because it's pretty amazing. So Frédéric Émile is a blend. It's a Grand. The grapes are Grand Cru, but you don't label it as a Grand Cru wine.
No. So the story behind the wine goes back to years ago now. We've produced this wine from Geisberg and Osterberg for 100 years, let's say. And in 75, the Grand Cru system came into Alsace. The classification was created. And the entire plot we have next to each other, because behind the winery, we have Geisberg and Osterberg next to each other. They are divided by a small line, but basically it's one big plot for us, Geisberg and Osterberg in the Frédéric Émile. And they were divided into 2 Grand Cru. And then we had the choice, if you want to follow the regulation of Grand Cru, you have to produce 2 different wines. You cannot label it Grand Cru if you mix 2 Grand Cru. Okay. My grandfather said that they just changed the name back in 67 in homage to their great-grandfather, Frédéric Émile Trimbach, who is my great, I never know how many great to put, 8th generation of the Trimbach family, great winemaker. They didn't want to change the wine. They decided, okay, we keep the wine as it is. And not so many people know about this Grand Cru in Alsace, but people start to know about our Frédéric Émile, which is coming from our best plots just behind the winery. So they kept the name. They didn't like the Grand Cru system so much in the years after that because it was not so strict at that time. It was very much strengthened in 2001, not before. So it took 30 years approximately for it to become, let's say, better. So yes, my grandfather and my great uncle Hubert, they were not so much big fans of the system itself, and the fact to be in a system maybe as well. I don't know. History is from the past. But still today we are making this wine from the same parcels of vineyards. Of course, it has a little bit changed because we had some Gewürztraminer in the Osterberg that we planted in Riesling. Of course, there have been a few changes, but we have about 3.7 or 8 hectares in these two vineyards behind the winery. And Frédéric Émile is, let's say, our signature Riesling today, a great Riesling for gastronomy, for noble food, beautiful moments, and a wine that you can keep in your cellar for many, many years. The soil makes it special, the exposure to the sun, the old vines, because it's 40, 50 years old vines at least. Huh? And what else? The talents maybe, or the work and the passion of the team, and the team in the cellar, in the vineyards as well, of course. And my father has been making the wines since 79, and my cousin is slowly taking over for the last 6 years or so.
Well, this wine is 10 years old.
Yes, you have an 11.
And I don't know, it seems like an infant. I mean, do you think it's a 50-year wine? Is it in a cool wine cellar? Is it a 50-year wine?
50, you mean 50?
Yes.
Hopefully, yes, because in the old days, some Frédéric Émile are at least 40, close to 50 years old. We taste sometimes, not every year, but sometimes we taste a very old one. I would say, I would not say keep it 50 years. I would say, of course, 10, 15, 20, 30 years, I have no doubt. More than that, today, we have not the visibility to say. I would love to be able to say yes, but we don't know. We have changed so much. The climate has changed. The viticulture has changed. It's very, I would be very positive to say yes if, but I would like to, but hopefully yes. But years and years, yes, no problem. That's one of the long-living Rieslings, Ribeauvillé, the acidity, the fault line, the terroir mosaic. It helps us to make wines with potential of aging.
How does the fault line affect? What is the impact of the fault line?
Well, especially the diversity of terroir and the richness of soils we have. In Ribeauvillé, we are on a fault line which has brought a sort of a big line of limestone called Muschelkalk, fossil-flecked limestone. And it goes through the village, the end of Rigvir, which is south of us. And then it goes to Hunevir and to Ribeauvillé and to Berkheim. And Muschelkalk, we have a lot in this area. And Muschelkalk, so limestone, so it gives you this very elegant but racy at the same time, powerful Rieslings, but so much refined and with length and acidity that, you know, when it does like that, this sound, and you want more, and the salinity in the wines and everything like that, we have just the perfect place to grow magnificent Riesling, to me. And then you have sandstone in some parts, one small part of granite in Ribeauvillé, but everything else has moved to the Schlossberg, which is 12 kilometers away from us in the south. What else do we have? Clay, a little bit of clay, of course, a mix of everything, and different layers. It's impressive. We did not, you know, these tubes, we did not dig everywhere in every part of the parcels we have yet, because it's a big, big work. But where we have the visibility of what we have in the soils, it's just different layers from parts to parts, from the top to the left to the right side of the Geisberg. You have already 5 different soils. We could probably do like every winemaker wants to do. It's a dream job, like 5 Frédéric Émile from 5 different places just in one place. But it's impossible. We produce close to 1 million bottles every year. In our life, it's impossible. But maybe in the future, who knows? Who knows?
I tasted the 2010 Cuvée Frédéric Émile about a month ago. And it's extraordinary. This is my first time tasting the 2011. It's equally extraordinary.
Merci.
You must be very, very proud. Let's just say you should be very, very proud.
I can say yes, because I'm not making the wines and I'm not part of the vineyards team every day that works a lot and very hard. I came to see them this morning. They were in the Grand Cru Mandelberg in Mittelwihr. It is steep like that, probably. And they were pioché, how to say, the young vines to make a little hole and to protect them with some chanvre, how to say, dry leaves, let's say. And these 100 times a day, I mean, the whole morning and afternoon, imagine, I mean, and raining a little bit from time to time. So no, it's not a dream job every day, but we have a very much luck because we have a young team of people in the vineyard that they all love wine, they all drink wine, understand wine, go to vacation destinations where there is a vineyard or something to see. So it's helping a lot, of course.
Yeah. You know, I've said this occasionally in these conversations that we've had. It is important to remember that winemaking is very hard work.
It is. Oh yes. And sometimes we don't know how hard it is. Even myself, when I came this morning, I said to them, oh, I forgot how steep it is here and how slippery it can be and how sometimes even dangerous it can be. And in the evening, you must sleep well. Oh la la la.
Yeah.
No,
you know, there's this
taking a plane actually is quite nice.
in the Mosel, there's this path that runs along above Valener Sonnenur, and it feels like standing on that path that if you take one step, you will fall into the river. It's so steep. You know, if you haven't been in these vineyards, like the Grand Cru vineyards in Alsace, if you haven't been there, if you haven't experienced that, you can't really get a feel for it in a picture or on a map, how steep it is.
Well, it's true. I tried this morning to make the best picture from my cell phone to make people realize tomorrow when I post it, for example, or after tomorrow, this is Grand Cru Mandelberg, look how steep it is. You don't see anything. Yeah. You just feel it when you are there. Exactly.
Yeah. So we have to taste the Pinot Gris now because we only have 5 more minutes of your time.
Pinot Gris Reserve 2017. For me, I'm sorry, we just moved, and you have 15.
Yeah, 15.
Which is not a problem because it was a great vintage, which was extremely warm and dry in Alsace, like a bit, not like, but similar in a way to 2018. We had these 2 vintages recently that were really very, very unique and special, but at the end, extremely great vintages. No lack of acidity. I mean, everything very ripe, but beautiful. Sometimes, like in 15, a little bit more residual sugar at the end, because of course, when you pick the grapes when they are extremely ripe, voila. But a beautiful Pinot Gris with a lot of fruitiness, maybe a bit more exotic touch than usually. With a touch of smokiness from the grape variety, not from the oak, because we never use new oak. We use only either stainless steel or very old casks. And a Pinot Gris called Reserve. Reserve here meaning a selection in different parcels of vineyards in the area of Ribeauvillé with usually quite old vines. And so again, not one terroir only, but about Pinot Gris. We don't produce a classic Pinot Gris. We start with this level Réserve because like Pinot Noir, Pinot Gris, Pinot Noir, these are very fragile and sensitive grape varieties. We believe they must be extremely perfectly healthy to make a great wine. So there is no classic label of this grape variety, like there is for Riesling, which is more, let's say, stronger, if I may say.
Are you already planning for the celebration in 2026?
We are thinking, not planning, but thinking about it. And we had lots of time with all these free evenings with no right to go outside. So I have lots of ideas. Then we must see where we are in this in a few years from now. But ideas, yes.
Is there an older family-owned, continuously family-owned winery in the world than your winery? More than 400 years old?
Oui, oui. Even in Alsace.
In Alsace?
Oui, oui. In Alsace, in Italy, by far. 1500 or so. Oui, oui, Italy. Right. I don't know who is the oldest winery in Europe. I have an idea, but I have a doubt at the same time. So, but I think it's Italian, but I don't want to say a mistake. But we are one of the old ones of Alsace, but there are some from 1500 and so. A friend of mine.
There are much older vineyards or wineries in Armenia and Georgia, but they're not owned by the same family.
Oui, oui.
The distinction is that your family has been making these wines in these vineyards for 400. These wines in these vineyards for 400 years. That's pretty unique.
I believe, but I'm not quite sure anymore. But I believe that the Antinori family in Italy, they have had the winery for a bit longer than us.
Maybe. Yeah.
Voilà. But yes, we've been there for a while.
Do you have siblings?
I have a younger sister. She's working with us. She's in the offices. She's the hidden face of Trimbach. She's behind all the technical sheets you can get, or everything you can get, like leaflets and future website and these kind of things. I used to do that, but she's better than me. And since she came 5 years ago, she's taken over this part.
Do you think your daughter's 5?
My daughter is 5, yes. She says she wants to do mise en bouteille, which means bottle the wine. She wants to bottle the wine like granddad. But that's now, and she's 5, so. I smile. I smile when I hear that, but everything can happen. The fact is, growing at the winery or having somebody in your family like my dad working there and talking about that every time. And I grew up there. I grew up at the winery, so I think there was something very natural for me. But Jeanne, my daughter, not growing up at the winery, and having just me traveling as well. I don't know. We'll see. But if she wants, she can. But no forcing. Never.
We had one of these conversations with Christian Moreau from Chablis and his son Fabien, who's kind of taking over now as Christian has retired. And he said, Christian said he knew when they were 7 years old, or I think 7 and 10 maybe, which one of his sons was going to end up being part of the wine business and which one wasn't, because Fabien was always helping and his brother was always in the way. And so, and it played out. Fabien now is taking over the reins of Christian Moreau. But we also had one of these, the way the world's changed, we had one of these conversations with Gaia. You mentioned the Antinori is another important Italian winemaking family. When she went to Milan to enroll in enology school, they told her they didn't accept women.
D'accord.
Imagine telling Angelo Gaia's daughter that she can't go to winemaking school.
Because she's a daughter, right?
Because she's female.
But you know, in the old days in my region, I think it was the same, and I always said it was kind of easy because when I was away, when I've been traveling for the last 13 years, I never felt a difference between being a woman or a man. In the countries that I visited, I've never been to the eastern side of Europe, but I've been mostly to the north or to the west. And in those countries, I've never had any problems. But it's true that if I recall some moments of life with my family, being a woman, and all of them were only men until I came, I'm still sometimes need to say, oh, don't forget that it's not because I'm a woman that that it's different. I mean, yes, for some things it can be, but not for everything. And I can assume as much as a man would do. And so, yes,
You know, when
sometimes
I first started in the wine business, female winemakers, winery owners were very, very rare. There was Corinne Mensalopoulos at Chateau Margaux and Philippine Rothschild at Mouton. I guess on Claude Laflave and Leloup Leroy were, well, I know Leloup was, and I guess on Claude Laflave at Domaine Laflave, but that was about it. And then Helen Turley and Heidi Barrett came along. But now I'd say more than 50% of these conversations we've had this last year, which is about 100 of them, have been with women. Laura Katrina and Gaia and Elisa Scavino and you know, on and on and on. I mean, so it's the world, things are getting better, I guess, because there's no resistance to females.
Exactly.
Yeah.
More and more, less and less. I mean, yes, less and less. Even in my family, at the end, after a few years, they realized, okay.
Well, Elisa Scavino at Paolo Scavino said that if you want to have female children in Piedmont, you should just drink a lot of wine because her entire generation in Piedmont is female. All the wineries have been taken over by women and Gaia, and then there's the three, you know, the Antonoris, there's 3 women in charge now. So it's just interesting. So I know that you have commitments that you have. So we'll finish.
A daughter and a timing, because we need to do everything before 7. Well, otherwise we don't know what happens. I don't play with that.
So if you would, I always ask this question at the end of these, and well, I want to ask one question. I would really love to, and I'll email you about this. I'd love to make this an annual event, at least for the next 5 years, so that we can do this again in 2026 or 21-26 on your 400th birthday. That would be awesome. And can you find some Clos St. Hune for us here in St. Paul? Can you send us some Clos St. Hune?
Because you didn't get some through
I'm kind of told that there wasn't any, but then they said, well, if we do get any, you can have it all. But I thought I would just, maybe you could send a few cases this way. However much you would make available, we'll take it. You don't have to ask.
Okay.
What's the current release of Clos St.
Hune? 2016.
16. That's what I thought. And of course, that's a miraculous wine.
We did not release 15 yet, and 2010 either. So that's why there is already 2016.
Well, we'd be thrilled. We'd be thrilled to have some 2016 for our clients.
I will see what I can do.
And for ourselves. Okay. But anyway, just one final question. I always ask the question because the answer is often really amazing. And I'm not asking what's the greatest wine I am not asking what's the greatest wine you've ever tasted. My question is, share with us a memorable wine experience from your life, please.
A memorable wine experience from my life. the first that comes to my mind, but tomorrow it could be maybe another one. But right now, I don't know why it comes now. But I was touring Paris with our agent in Paris back in 2008, right when I started. I did not know so much about other wine regions. I mean, I knew, but not in practice. I did marketing and communication studies. I was in Burgundy for 3 years, so I had the opportunity to taste many Pinot Noir and Chardonnay from there. But beside that, I did not go to Loire, or I did not go here and there. And I was with this guy who took me to a restaurant that we wanted him to be client. And he said to me, "Do you know this wine, Clos Rougeard, white?" And I said, "No, I don't know it. I don't know anything about it." "You don't know? That's not possible." And he made me taste this Clos Rougeard 2000, 2000 maybe, or 2000, no, 2000, I think.
Which you're was talking about the wine from Saumur?
Oui, exactly. Yeah. Saumur, Champigny, Saumur, they make the brothers Rougeard, they were together at that time, and they used to make amazing wine. And I tasted this wine, and I never tasted such a great Chenin in my life before. And voilà, that's a memory of life. I don't know. And since then, this person has had a very, very he's one of these very generous men that loves to teach about what he knows, but not in a bad way. Not like, I want to show you my knowledge. I want to share what I know with you, and that's a big difference. Voilà. But I have many other moments of wine. I've been extremely lucky to taste. I have wines like you at your James Beard Award evening years ago. Sometimes you are lucky, you meet some people, because it's wine world or restaurant world, you meet people and they invite you to their table. You have wines in your bag, you exchange, you share, and it's magical sometimes.
I have a good friend who's a very influential sommelier here named Rajat Par. He's the director. Oh, you know Raj. Yeah, of course you know.
I never met him in real, but I talked to him.
Well, of course you know who Raj is. So we've been friends a long time. But he started, I don't know, 15 years ago, he started talking about Clos Rougeard. Nobody had ever heard of Clos Rougeard. Nobody had ever heard of this winery. And he started talking about it, and it became this sensation. And now, I mean, he created this sensation that Clos Rougeard is, and now he can't afford to buy them because they've gotten so expensive because of how famous he personally made this winery. Their wines are extraordinary. They are truly extraordinary wines. You don't think of wines from this place being like that, but they are. You know. Right. But the Puyo's now, their single vineyard wines are now $300 a bottle. You know, it's just crazy expensive. So I tried to sell him some about a year ago. He said, I can't afford it anymore.
Right. Yeah. No, when one touches a certain level of price, okay. Right.
Well, for that price, I could buy some Clos St. Hune.
C'est vrai.
Maybe. if you're nice enough to make some available to us.
Nice enough. Don't put everything on me, because the only issue is that the allocation have been made, and I can always make a big smile to blah 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 somebody here and there and see, but I cannot promise anything. But
I'm not asking you to.
I always try.
I have you on the screen. I'd be doing myself a disservice if I didn't ask.
Right. You're right.
And I just have this important memory from this night at the James Beard House with 3 vintages of that wine that unfortunately I didn't get to taste because I was all hopped up on painkillers. Well, I know you have to run, so I don't want to abuse your time. We've already gone over 11 minutes, and
it's okay. I know how it is. That's why I always plan a bit. Voilà.
Yeah. Well, I would be thrilled to talk to you for another 2 hours, but
another time, anytime.
but so I'm going to send you, I'm going to create a Zoom call for about a year from now and send you the
Okay.
link. And,
Okay.
and we'll do this again in a year, and then in 2 years, and then in 3 years, and then 4 years. And then in 2026, we'll do a fifth, I
Great.
guess, fifth tasting to celebrate your 400th anniversary, which would be, that's,
Wonderful.
and then it's time for me to retire because I'll be
Okay.
73 years old. I can just retire. That can be my retirement party, is a tasting with you.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, and thank you so much. This has been so special. Honestly, all three wines are fantastic, but the Cuvée Frédéric Émile is, I don't know, it's amazing. It's just amazing. So thank you. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Have a great evening.
You too.
Or a day at least.
Or day, yeah.
Bye.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
Bye.